Hey everyone, Shark here! Neuvillette's rerun has made a lot of people really excited, but it's also left people wondering whether it's better to use their extra Primo Gems to get his first Constellation, or to get his signature weapon. That's why in this video we'll be looking at the value of Neuvillette's first Constellation and his signature weapon, and going over which will give you more damage, more flexibility, and how each affects Neuvillette's playstyle, and what is the overall best value for your account. I've played plenty of Neuvillette at C1 without his signature weapon, and at C0 with his signature weapon, so I'll not only provide you calculations on specific damage increases, but I'll also talk about the things those calculations won't tell you. We'll begin by going over what each of these power spikes does for the High Judge, how they are improvements over his free-to-play options, and I'll provide calculations and tips that will help you clarify the question of which is better. With that said, don't forget to place your fin on that like button, and let's begin by discussing Neuvillette's first Constellation, or C1. Neuvillette C1 gives him 1 stack of past Draconic Glory whenever he takes the field. This is part of Neuvillette's first Ascension passive, and it can stack up to 3 times. You gain stacks of this passive by having a party member trigger a Hydro-related reaction. And depending on the number of stacks you have, Neuvillette's special charge attack will deal 10%, 25%, or 60% more damage. Since Neuvillette C1 automatically gives him 1 stack, it makes it a lot easier to get the other 2 stacks for the maximum amount of charge attack damage. His C1 also gives him the maximum amount of interruption resistance while he's performing his special charged attack. This level of interruption resistance is the same as Raiden's in her elemental burst, meaning that Neuvillette cannot get knocked around while he's doing his special charged attack once you've unlocked his Constellation 1. After unlocking his C1, you can of course still take damage while you're in his special charged attack state, but you'll no longer get knocked out of it. So in Razor language, Neuvillette C1 gets free stack, easier to make charge attack do more damage, can't be knocked out of charge attack. The advantages of Neuvillette C1 is that it allows for more varied team builds while maximizing Neuvillette's personal damage. Uninterruptible charge attacks are very nice. It can be nice for mobile players because charge attacks and movement with Neuvillette are more difficult on mobile as well. And overall, this Constellation is a 24% DPS increase over a C0 Neuvillette. The downside to this Constellation is that uninterruptible charge attacks are really not that useful if you keep enemies at a long range and kite them around, and with practice you'll get much better with Neuvillette, and so the uninterruptible charge attacks may not feel quite as useful. Next up, let's talk about Neuvillette's signature weapon, the Tome of Eternal Flow. At level 90, the Tome of Eternal Flow has a base attack of 542, which is pretty low, but not necessary for Neuvillette since he scales off HP anyways, and it gives you 88.2% crit damage. For passive effects, it gives you a 16% increase to your HP, and when your HP increases or decreases, your charged attack damage will be increased by 14% for 4 seconds, with a maximum of 3 stacks, or 42% increased charge attack damage. And when you have 3 stacks of this charge attack buff, or when you refresh a 3rd stack, you will restore 8 energy, which can be triggered once every 12 seconds. Among signature 5-star weapons, this one is incredibly good. It not only increases Neuvillette's crit damage by a very high amount, but it also increases his HP, which makes him a little bit tankier, but also increases his damage since he scales off of HP. It also increases his charge attack damage, which is the main way he does damage, and it also restores energy, which makes rotations with Neuvillette much easier. Overall, the Tome of Eternal Flow is about a 38% DPS increase over free-to-play options like the prototype Amber, and that's about twice as much of a DPS increase as other signature weapons are for their intended 5 stars compared to other free-to-play weapon options. So the weapon is significantly better for damage, so that's what you should choose, right? Well, not necessarily, because there's a lot more to consider than just damage increases. Neuvillette C1 gives you more team flexibility, allowing you to have more freedom to run high-powered off-field damage dealers like Fischl, while still maximizing his Draconic Glory stacks for his best damage. It also allows you to pair Neuvillette with Farina and 2 other unique characters on your team. while still maximizing Neuvillette's personal damage. This is a huge advantage since Neuvillette and Furina pair incredibly well together, and his C1 takes away one of the only disadvantages he has when pairing with Furina at C0. And the interruption resistance feels really good, even if it is something that you'll outgrow as you get better at playing Neuvillette, because sometimes there are enemies who will just do attacks that are just not telegraphed, or they're hard to see, and you might eat that stray hit, and it feels really bad if you get knocked out of your charge attack early. We also have to consider the Primogem cost to get his C1 and his weapon. And the full value of his C1 is a bit difficult to quantify, so we're just going to look at the damage percent increase of his C1 and the damage percent increase of his signature weapon. For these calculations, I assumed you already have Neuvillette, and I also assumed the worst case scenario, that you had to go to hard pity every time until you were guaranteed to get the Constellation or the weapon. This isn't exactly realistic, but I just wanted to give you the absolute worst case scenario so you have a general idea of what happens if you are unlucky. To get Neuvillette's first Constellation, assuming you already have him, it could take up to 180 wishes, and that would be for a 24% damage increase. This means that your value per Primogems for Neuvillette C1 is about 0.13%. This number individually is not that important, just know that higher is better. Now when we look at Neuvillette's signature weapon, it can take up to 240 wishes to get one copy of his signature weapon because the weapon banner is a giant trap. However, it also gives him a 38% damage increase. This means that your value per Primogem for this damage increase is 0.158%, or higher than his C1. Which means that in the worst case scenario, going for his weapon is a little bit more Primogem efficient for damage over going for his C1. But obviously, if you win your 50-50 and get his C1 early or get his weapon early, then that throws these calculations off quite a bit and the value would jump up dramatically. So now that we've broken everything down, let's talk about what is best for you individually. While Neuvillette C1 does not offer as much of a damage increase as going for his personal weapon, there are a lot of things about it that are hard to quantify. The interruption resistance is really nice and honestly just makes playing Neuvillette feel so much better, and the fact that you can also make more varied team comps with him at C1 while still maximizing his personal damage also feels really good. I recommend going for Neuvillette C1 if you're a mobile player or have a hard time maneuvering with Neuvillette and dodging enemy attacks. I also recommend Neuvillette C1 if you want to play him with Furina and max out his personal damage without using a shield character. In the end, Neuvillette C1 brings a great balance of increased damage, comfort, and more team flexibility while maintaining his personal damage. And going for Neuvillette C1 will cost you a lot less Primogems on average than going for his signature weapon. So in my opinion, this is a great option for players who want the most value for their Primogems. Neuvillette's weapon, on the other hand, is for players who care first and foremost about damage. If it feels really easy to dodge enemy attacks with Neuvillette, or if you plan on running him with a shield character like Layla or Zhongli, or even if you plan on running Neuvillette with a team that contains characters of 4 unique elements and you just want to push as much damage with him as possible, then you should go for his weapon. His weapon will bring more damage than his C1, so if you want to hyper invest into Neuvillette, I recommend going for his weapon. Just know that it can cost a lot more Primogems to acquire on average compared to his C1. I hope this video clarified the value of Neuvillette's Constellation 1 and his signature weapon. My honest opinion is that the best option comes down to the player. If you're someone who prefers a nice all-round mix of damage, comfort, utility, while also caring about value, then his C1 is the best option for you. But if you're someone who wants to do the biggest numbers and that makes you really happy, then his weapon is a much better choice. And of course, Neuvillette does not need his C1 or his signature weapon to be great. As I discussed in my previous video, he's great at C0 with free-to-play weapons, and even at a totally free-to-play level, he's one of the best on-field damage dealers that we have to date. So if this video helped you understand the value of Neuvillette C1 and his signature weapon, make sure to give it a like and sub to the channel. And if you have more questions about what other characters or what else would be best for your accounts, then feel free to leave them in the comments below, or you can also ask me live on Twitch. I stream daily in the mornings Eastern Standard Time and will be able to answer your questions live that way, and if a lot of people ask me the same questions, I might even make a video about it. That's it for this one, everyone. I love you all, stay jawsome, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.